Episode 140. Han Li sat quietly in the corner, coldly observing it all, but when he heard that the cyan gel banner in his hand had also come from this very furnace, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of surprise. He knew nothing about artifact forging, so he had no idea what this cauldron was worth. But Han Li was perfectly capable of sticking to his principle. If it wasn't something he could use, he wouldn't bid on it. Besides, while I have a fair number of spirit stones, they need to be spent on what truly matters.
450.
470.
I bid 500 spirit stones.
Regardless of Han Li's thoughts, the auction price for the Red Luo Heaven Furnace soon soared to a terrifying level.
780.
This was the gritted teeth bid of a heavy-set figure in a yellow cloak.
800.
Not far from the fat man, a female cultivator calmly raised the bid another notch, making him clench his fists in fury. At this point, the price had reached what could only be called astronomical. The rest had long since dropped out of the bidding, left to watch with bitter, helpless eyes as these two deep-pocketed Foundation establishment cultivators drove the price higher and higher.
850. If you can bid one more coin higher, madam, this cauldron is yours.
After raising the price one more time, the fat man fixed the female cultivator with an angry glare.
851.
The moment the fat man spoke, the female cultivator let out a cold snort and deliberately bid just one more spirit stone. The fat cultivator's face, hidden beneath his hood, flushed a deep blood red. He shot a few venomous glances at his opponent, but then, to everyone's surprise, he actually stopped bidding. And so, this Foundation establishment cultivator paid a sky-high price for this famously renowned alchemy cauldron. Whether it was truly worth the cost, well, that remains to be seen. Perhaps the fierce bidding had overstimulated the cultivator's nerves, because the previously subdued atmosphere in the hall suddenly ignited into a frenzy. One after another, the top-tier magic tools and rare materials were snatched up by the fervent cultivators. But after 20 items had been auctioned off, Han Li still hadn't seen any formation flags or array plates for sale, and this was starting to wear on his patience.
If nothing like that shows up at this auction, I'll have to go back to the Starry Sky Pavilion. Even the most basic array magic tools would be better than nothing, so I'll just buy a few sets.
Just as Han Li was thinking this, the tall, skinny man up front announced the name of the next auction item.
A pair of high-grade magic tool puppet automatons. Their strength rivals a 9th-level chi condensation cultivator, and they are absolutely loyal, fearless to the death. Buy them, and you'll have 2 personal bodyguards at your side. Starting price is just 100 spirit stones.
Puppet constructs? My high-grade magic tool is called a puppet archer. Are they the same kind of thing?
Han Li's interest was piqued. He sat up straight, his gaze sharpening. The tall, thin man had now placed 2 dark, doll-like objects on the table. They were only the size of a fist, their forms resembling both lion and tiger, yet neither lion nor tiger. It was unclear what monstrous creature had served as their prototype.
Many of you may not have heard of, or have rarely heard of, the Taoist art of puppet mechanism arts.
This is a Tao technique that evolved from magic tool forging. While it's rarely known around these parts, it's incredibly popular and thriving in the far western lands. There's even a sect there called the Thousand Bamboo Sect, founded specifically on this art. They've taken this technique to its absolute peak.
It's said that the most advanced puppet constructs can even hold their own against a Foundation establishment cultivator in the late stage. Also, rating this pair of mechanical beasts as a high-grade magic tool is our shop's private classification. According to the formal grading system of puppetry arts, they should actually be called second-level puppet beasts.
Seeing the lack of interest from the cultivators below and the awkward silence that followed, the man hurriedly launched into the prepared pitch he had memorized, hoping to spark their curiosity. But after all that talk, while the cultivators below felt a flicker of curiosity, no one was willing to do something so foolish as to spend 100 spirit stones on a pair of playthings. Besides, what use would a chi condensation 9th stage bodyguard be to any cultivator here?
100 spirit stones.
At that moment, a voice sounded from the corner. Someone actually wanted to buy this trinket. Instantly, the gazes of all the cultivators swung toward that corner. But this person wasn't Han Li. It was a masked individual sitting in another corner, an utterly ridiculous and laughable oddball with a huge, baggy gray sack covering their entire head.
150 spirit stones.
Just as the other cultivators were thinking this eccentric fellow was a hopeless spendthrift, another bid rang out in the hall, this one in a strange, thickly accented voice, each word spoken with a stiff, unnatural cadence. The cultivators in the hall were stunned, their gazes shifting to the new bidder, a burly figure in a green cloak, sitting with arms crossed in the very last row. The new offer had come from him. As the cultivators stared, the man met their gazes with a cold, unflinching glare, showing not a hint of unease.
200 spirit stones.
I bid 300.
400.
600.
In the blink of an eye, the two of them had talked the price of these puppet beasts up to an unbelievable level. By this point, even the dullest cultivators in the hall could sense something was off.
Could these puppet beasts really be hiding some astonishing secret?
At that moment, the same thought occurred to every single cultivator present. After exchanging glances, the cultivators in the great hall felt their hearts pounding. Several of the wealthiest and most impatient among them immediately jumped into the bidding. However, some of the more seasoned cultivators, while tempted, remained skeptical.
Are those two shills for the auction house?
Could they be deliberately driving up the price of this worthless item, just to make fools of us?
Quite a few cultivators shared that suspicion. Han Li watched with a skeptical, utterly unmoved expression.
900 spirit stones. And this item.
Seeing more and more cultivators joining the bidding, the burly, strange man grew anxious. In his haste, he pulled something from his storage pouch, took a few large strides over to the tall, thin man, and slapped it down on the table before him.
This item is worth thousands of spirit stones. More than enough for those puppets. Hand them over.
Seeing the situation was getting out of hand, the tall, thin man had already shrewdly stashed the pair of puppet beasts back into his storage pouch. Now, seeing this burly man pull out a black, seemingly ordinary piece of scrap iron and try to force him to bring out his own, now greatly appreciated, auction item, he couldn't help but roll his eyes.
You'd best calm down. We will appraise the value of your item, but for now, please return to your seat. Otherwise, we will have to consider you a deliberate troublemaker and will not be so polite.
The burly man flew into a rage the moment he heard the lanky man's threat. What was his status, after all? Back in his own sect, he was a man whose word commanded thousands. When had he ever had to swallow such humiliation? He clenched his fists, ready to explode. But when his gaze swept over the sack-headed oddity, he found the other man staring fixedly back at him, a glint of schadenfreude in his eyes. This gave him pause. After a moment's reconsideration, he forcibly suppressed the fury boiling within. He walked back to his seat. Some of the cultivators who had been expecting a good show couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. The auction for the puppet beasts would continue, but that dark, unidentifiable object had already been handed over to the trio seated in the sandalwood chairs. They were discussing the object in hushed tones. Though their masks hid their expressions, their extreme caution was plain for every cultivator to see. After the three of them had turned that palm-sized, black, cast-iron-looking object over and over for several inspections, they finally reached a consensus. Then, the black-robed man in the middle stood up and announced in a loud voice,
Top-grade iron essence, 1 piece, valued at 2,000 spirit stones.
Then, without another word, the person sat back down.
Iron essence.
The word sent a jolt through every cultivator present. Anyone who had been about to bid immediately shut their mouths and fell silent.
Could this person actually be a core formation expert? Otherwise, where would they have gotten refined iron from? This is a magic treasure ingredient that can only be refined by a core formation cultivator's inner flame.
And under normal circumstances, a cultivator would immediately fuse this refined material into their own magic treasure to enhance its power. They would never let such materials flow out into the open market so easily. And if you could mix just a speck of these magic treasure materials, like iron essence, into an ordinary magic tool, its power would absolutely skyrocket. It might even be possible to elevate its grade entirely. Naturally, their value has soared even higher because of this. So, that burly fellow just now, was he a core formation cultivator? Deliberately suppressing his aura to pose as a foundation establishment cultivator. After all, low-level cultivators can't see through the depth of a core formation expert. Just as the cultivators were all on edge, their minds filled with suspicion, the tall, thin man finally spoke again, prompted by the three figures behind him.
Does anyone wish to bid above 2,900 spirit stones? If not, these puppet beasts will go to this gentleman.
The lanky man seemed intent on driving the price even higher, deliberately dragging out his words to stall for time. But who in the hall would dare to casually raise the bid now? The people attending this auction were no ordinary folk. They were either important figures from cultivation clans or foundation establishment cultivators who had reached the great perfection stage. But in the face of a suspected core formation cultivator, who among them would dare court trouble? As for that eccentric fellow who had been so confrontational from the start, he too remained seated, silent. It was impossible to tell if he was simply stunned by the iron crystal, or if his pockets were simply too light to produce such a vast sum of spirit stones. Han Li was also taken aback when he heard the words iron essence. His cheap master had lost 2 lumps of iron crystal to that old freak Kyung in a bet. Back then, seeing the look of utter frustration on his master's face, he knew this material had to be incredibly precious.
And so the pair of puppet beasts fell uncontested into the burly man's hands. His hands trembled with excitement as he took them.
But this only made the itch in the hearts of the cultivators present grow all the more unbearable. Most of them were itching to snatch the puppet beast away and pore over its secrets. The burly, hooded man took the puppet beast and immediately left his seat, heading for the stone door. But when he reached the door, he found it had been shut tight from the outside.
He pushed against it with all his might, but the stone door didn't budge an inch.
What's the meaning of this? Are you saying we can't leave after buying our goods?
The man's voice grew darker, his already strange accent making it all the more unsettling to hear.
Of course not. As soon as the auction concludes, we'll open the gates and let you leave. But not now.
This time, the speaker wasn't the tall, thin man presiding over the trade fair, but the sharp-tongued man in black seated to the left.
What? That makes no sense. I'm leaving this place right now.